as you know, one of the central ideas to your current unit of inquiry is around developing an understanding of local and global issues and so taking action around those. So we want to talk to you a little bit about how we do that at PathFinders as a local NGO in Hong Kong. And then in terms of lines of inquiry, we're looking at the purpose of the UN Global Goals. So we covered that a little bit in the video that you would have watched before. We're looking at issues that exist locally and globally. So hopefully through the presentation, you'll be able to see that some of the stuff that happens in Hong Kong also happens globally and vice versa. And really how your actions can lead to change within our community and also sustainability. Okay, so these faces represent some of the children that we support at PathFinders. But before we start our session, we're going to kick off with a short quiz. And these are questions based on the videos that you would have watched in advance. And you'll see the answers to each of the questions are either a high five, hand up, a thumb, or a clapping of hands. So for each question, we're going to ask you to use your emojis and see if you know the answers to the questions. Okay, so we're going to start with the first one. Oh, if I can move this forward. So, what do the letters UN stand for? Okay, so use your emojis. Okay, great. I can see some of those coming up. Okay, give you a couple more minutes for everybody to answer this first question. What does the UN stand for? Okay. So the UN stands for the United Nations. Okay, so I can see a few people have got that right. So well done. Big round of applause for you guys. Okay. How many nations are members of the UN? So nations means countries. How many countries are members of the UN? So again, using your emojis, high five, hand up for 213, clapping of hands for 193, or a thumbs up for 153. I see lots of hands. So there's actually 193 nations that are members of the UN. Not all countries are members of the United Nations. Okay, ready for the next question? Yeah? Okay. What do the letters SDG stand for? Okay, so does this stand for the Sustainable Development Goals, the Smart Development Goals, or the Special Development Goals? So hands up if it's sustainable, clapping hands if you think it's smart, or thumbs up if you think that they're special. Okay, so we've got a few different answers. Okay, good job. So let's see what the answer is. They are the Sustainable Development Goals. So good job. I can see lots of hands up for that one. Okay, which UN organ, and there's 6 of them, which UN organ is responsible for reviewing implementation of the SDGs? Implementation means the rolling out to make sure that we're doing these in a good way. Is it the Security Council? Hands up if you think it's the Security Council. Is it the Human Rights Control? Clap your hands if you think it's that one. Or is it the Economic and Social Council? So if you think it's that one, give us a thumbs up. Okay. Okay. All answers in? Okay. The right answer is the Economic and Social Council. This is the organ that's responsible for reviewing the SDGs. Okay, how many SDGs are there? Are there 10? Put your hand up if you think it's 10. Are there 15? You clap your hands if you think it's 15. Or are there 17? And let's give a thumbs up if we think it's 17. Okay, so let's give you a couple of minutes. So how many SDGs, how many Sustainable Development Goals are there? Okay. Okay. There are 17. There are 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And do we know what the letters UNCRC stand for? So if you think it's UN Commission for the Rights of the Child, let's put our hands up. If we think it's the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, let's clap our hands. And if we think it's the UN Child Rights Commission, put your thumbs up. Okay. Let's just give you a couple minutes to think about this one. Okay, good. Okay, so it is, clap our hands, it's the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. Okay. And how many articles define child rights within the UNCRC, within the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child? Is it 41, 42, or 54? So hands up if you think it's 41, clapping your hands if you think it's 42, and big thumbs up if you think it's 54. Okay. Okay, right. You got your answers? Okay, it's 41. This is a little bit of a trick question because when you look at the child-friendly version of the Child Rights Convention on the Rights of the Child, you'll see they're numbered 1 to 54. But actually the first one doesn't define a right. The first one defines what a child is, and that's anybody that's under the age of 18. And then 43 to 54 talk about how the convention works. So really there are only 41 rights that are defined. And how many themes can the UNCRC articles be grouped into? This was covered in your video, so I wonder if you remember. Is it 2? Is it 4? Or is it 6? Let's see if you remember. 2, 4, or 6? Remember to use your emojis to give the answer, okay? So the right answer is 4. We can group the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, the 41 articles, under 4 themes, those being survival, development, protection, and participation. And how many components of nurturing care are there? So you remember you looked at a video that talked about the nurturing care framework and the importance of how many components on early childhood development. So is it 5, 10, or 15? I'm going to do a few more questions and then we're going to start our presentation. You've all got, most of you have got hands up, so you'll think it's 5. Okay, let's see if you're right. Yes, you're right. 5 components of nurturing care: good health, nutrition, responsive caregiving, safety and security, and opportunities for early learning. And do you remember what percentage of a child's brain is developed between pregnancy and 3? Can you remember from the videos? So was it 50%, 65%, or 80%? See lots of things changing. I'm just checking. Okay, remember to use your emojis to respond to the questions. Okay, and the answer is 80%. That's a lot of your brain that's developed from pregnancy to 3, and that means that those 5 components of nurturing care are super important for you when you're young. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit more about PathFinders and what we do at PathFinders. So let me just get my slide set up. So the children that you see on this slide are the reason that we exist at PathFinders. And before Lisa and I share a little bit more about our work, we want to share with you first a quick video so you don't have to hear us talking all the time. Okay, so we're going to share this with you now.
I'm Sadia. I'm a senior case manager and have been with PathFinders for over 5 years now. I have provided care, counseling, and practical help to mothers and their children who are going through tough times. I have recently become a mom, and it's not been an easy journey. What has helped me so much is the support of my husband and our extended family. It surely takes a village to raise a child. In the same way, migrant moms need the support of people around them, the community, to find their path to a brighter future. Whenever I look at my daughter, my hope is for her to receive equal opportunities and reach her fullest potential. That's also my heartfelt desire for all the babies and children that come through our door at PathFinders seeking help. That is not only because all children matter, but they also deserve a fair start in life.
Okay, so that just gives you a little bit of an idea about some of the work that we do, but why do we need to exist? So there are currently 360,000 migrant domestic workers in Hong Kong, many who are helping families with childcare, elderly care, and also to help with household duties. So many of you probably have an auntie at home that's helping to take care of you. In Hong Kong, because our population is getting older very quickly, we will need 600,000 migrant domestic workers by 2047 to help care for our grandparents. Many of the workers, migrant domestic workers who are your aunties, they also have children too. They're working mummies too. So if they come to Hong Kong, they're able to earn more money than if they were to work in their home country, which can provide a brighter future for their children and also their extended family members at home. But if a migrant domestic worker gets pregnant in Hong Kong, she's entitled to 14 weeks of maternity leave, and this is time off work that gives her an opportunity to nurture, care, and bond with her child, like every working woman in Hong Kong. But as lots of employers and migrant domestic workers don't know this, a lot of pregnant workers may resign, or their employers may end their jobs. They may fire them because they don't know what else to do. So when this happens, the migrant domestic worker will immediately become homeless because she needs to live with you. And within 2 weeks, she no longer has a work visa. And you need a work visa to be able to access key services like healthcare. And of course, that's really important for her unborn child. Many of these mummies, expectant mummies, are a bit scared to go home as they think their families will be cross with them as they're no longer earning money and sending money home to their families. So they stay in Hong Kong longer than they should. And they live here illegally and in secret. We call that underground, and not able to access any services. So as a consequence, their babies are typically not born in a hospital. They don't have something important like a birth certificate. They don't go to a doctor to get any checkups on their immunization or to check their growths. And when they're old enough, they also can't go to school. So as the only organization in Hong Kong that specifically supports the needs of children born to migrant workers, we place the child at the center of everything that we do. And we make sure as a local organization that we're aligned to global frameworks like the Nurturing Care Framework and some of the SDGs. So that PathFinders as a local organization is directly contributing to the local goals to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. Each case at PathFinders is different. We call it unique. As Sadia explained in the video, our caseworkers provide comfort, care, and counseling to ensure migrant mothers have the critical information and support they need to address their individual immigration, medical, legal, employment, emotional, and security issues. They provide access to our emergency shelter. Also, they provide them with essential supplies like nappies and formula if they can't breastfeed. They provide access to healthcare, so they get to see a doctor. Education, we do things like kinder music, which many of you may have done when you were also children. but also legal information and support if they have particularly tricky issues that need a little bit more expertise. They also ensure that if a child has been abandoned or is vulnerable, that that child is protected and as quickly as possible placed in a loving and stable family environment. So today we're going to talk to you specifically about just one part of what we do, and that's documentation. And this is to ensure that children have something important like a birth certificate. So this kind of is covered by each of the different global issues or goals or frameworks that you would have covered. So if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, this falls under Goal 6, that by 2030, everyone should have a legal identity. It's also covered in the Convention on the Rights of the Child, that everyone has the right to a name and a nationality. And it's also covered within the Nurturing Care framework under safety and security, because if you don't have an identity, you can't access things like social welfare and healthcare, as we just mentioned. So I'm going to hand over to Lisa now. She's going to tell you a story, a real story about two girls that we helped to secure a birth certificate and the things that can go wrong when children don't have something like a birth certificate. So Lisa, I'm going to pass over to you.
Yes, and Catherine, actually, I think you're going to have to help me change the slides. So I will let you know.
I can do that. Okay, I can do that.
All right, so this is an old photo of Dawn and Kay. They're 4 and 5 years old, two happy girls on the Star Ferry here in Hong Kong. When you were in that age, you were probably in school, in kindergarten, or in year 1. But during this time, Dawn and Kay, they were not in school, and they would never go to school. Never in their whole life. And so what went wrong? I will have to take it back more than 30 years ago. So Dawn and Kay's mum, Feli, she came to Hong Kong to work as a domestic helper, to migrant domestic worker here in Hong Kong. She came from Philippines, and so she came here to work as an auntie. But just before the girls were born, she lost her job. And as Catherine mentioned, if you do lose your job as a migrant domestic worker, you need to find a new job, otherwise you're not allowed to stay in Hong Kong. Short after Dawn was born, and a year later, Kay came along. And Feli knew she needed to go to birth registry to register the girls for a birth certificate, a document you need to have to be able to go to school, to receive healthcare, or to travel overseas. But she was so afraid of going to the birth registry because she had lost her visa herself. So she was so worried she would be caught by the police or they would take the girls away from her. So she didn't go there. And her boyfriend, the father of the children, they left the family as well just 2 years after Kay was born. So growing up, the sisters never went to school. They never had healthcare service, anything, as they didn't have any documents of any type. And Feli was teaching them at home. She was teaching them English, Tagalog. She was using library cards from friends, borrowing books. But most of the time, the girls just stayed at home. So Dawn and Kay grew older, and Feli, the mother, she got more and more worried that the police would take them one day. And she had tried to find help and to find a way out of this, but no one really knew how to help them. And one day, eventually, she found out about PathFinders, and PathFinders helped them to find a way. Next slide, please. So it wasn't easy. So when the family approached PathFinders, we did everything we could to help them, but it wasn't easy to prove that the girls existed. They'd been here for over 30 years underground, like they didn't exist. And so PathFinders, with assistance of 2 lawyers, we had to get DNA tested to confirm that they were actually connected to the mothers, and the children were connected. And we need to prove as well that the children had been here the whole time. They were not children anymore, actually. They were 2 grown-up women. And that they had spent their whole life here in Hong Kong. So before we could help them to surrender, we had to do all this. And they were long interviews, 12-hour interviews with the immigration department. And to receive a birth certificate, that was Dawn's birthday wish. And finally, in October 2020, she and her sister received a birth certificate. They received it from the birth registry office in Admiralty. And this was a huge milestone in their journey to freedom. And what my colleague Hina, who's one of our caseworker who was handling this case, was saying, that this was just a priceless moment, and that this has been such a difficult time for them. And we've been so lucky as well that they managed to get the birth certificate. Anything could have happened because they have been underground. They have been non-existing for over 30 years. Next slide, please. So they finally decided to go back to Philippines, or not back, but that was going back for Feli to the family. And they managed to go back just in time for Christmas. And they were able to then meet the grandmother and their extended family for the first time in their life. So this is it's a very extraordinary story of how things can go extremely wrong when you don't have a birth certificate. Something all children are entitled to receive, no matter who you are, no matter where you're born. This is something super crucial for all children. All right. I will take you to some more some more questions. So now we're going to see how well you listen to Catherine. How many migrant domestic workers do we have here in Hong Kong? How many aunties do we have? Hand for 250,000, claps 360, or thumbs up for 600,000. Maybe you, Catherine, can see more what the responses are. I can't really see here in my screen. Okay, yes, that's the correct one.
Lots of hands up. Yeah, so
yes, clap.
Should be claps. Should be lots of claps.
Yeah. All right, next one. So is a migrant domestic worker entitled to time off to spend time with the baby, maternity leave when she have a baby? Yes or no? The no should actually be a thumbs down, I would say.
Yeah. Okay, lots of hands up.
Brilliant. Yes, they have the same right as anyone else here in Hong Kong. All working women in Hong Kong have the right to sorry. Let's take to the next question. Yeah, I almost said the answer there. How many weeks is maternity leave for all working women here in Hong Kong? The hand for 10 weeks, clap for 14 weeks, or thumbs up for 20 weeks.
Okay, a mixed bag. So let's
All
see
right.
what the answer is.
Yeah, 14 weeks. Right. And so such a crucial question, which I hope if there's anything that you should remember from this one. So how soon after birth should a child be registered? Hands up for immediately, clap for 1 year later after the child is born, or 5 years later after the child has been born.
Happy to see lots of raised.
Yeah, I'm very happy to see that as well. That's brilliant. Great. Okay, so what are you unable to do if you don't have a birth certificate? Attend school, receive medical care, or travel overseas? So what are you not able to do?
Okay.
Right, so this was a bit of a trick question. So it's actually all of them. You're not able to do any of these things if you don't have a birth certificate. And so the crucial need for one. Okay, so and we have some call to action. So some of the things, so what can you do as a year 6 student? What can you do to make a difference here for Pathfinders, but not only for Pathfinders women, but just for your auntie as well? It's okay. Next one. So one thing you could do, just so you can kind of make aware of what is the birth certificate, you can actually ask your parents to show your birth certificate. See what time you were born and where. Actually, that wouldn't say on the birth certificate. And you can also ask your parents about your birth story. Another thing you can do is appreciate your auntie. You can write a letter to her or draw a card and say thank you for everything that she does. That will mean a lot to her. But you can also ask your auntie where she's born and when her birthday is, and make a note of the date, and then you can make a card and celebrate her on her birthday. And another thing that you can do, which would be together with us at PathFinders, is to share your auntie's story on our Monday column. So if your auntie have children herself, which many of them do, you can ask them, you can ask her if she's a working mom, and you can write the story together with her with Pathfinders and feature in our social media. Yeah. Anything else, Catherine? So final, any questions for us?